Good afternoon. Our next speaker, Major George Filer, spent 20 years in the United States Air Force working as an intelligence officer and flyer, accumulating 5,000 hours of flying time prior to his retirement. He graduated from Squadron Officers School and the Industrial College of the Armed Forces. He was awarded the Bronze Star for his service during Vietnam. During his career, he chased UFOs and became an expert in unidentified flying objects with special intelligence and above top secret clearances. Let me welcome to the stage Major George Filer.
It's bright. How's everyone today? Thank you for coming. I find that this group of people is probably more curious than others and more intelligent. Would you agree with that? And forward thinking, that I think we all realize that something's going on in the world and that we want to find out about it. Hopefully I'm here to help you learn something about that. Are the aliens friends or foes? Well, that's a tough question. I think, I believe that they're probably a little bit of both. Just like us, some humans are our friends and some are our foes. There's millions of planets out there, maybe even billions of planets, and there's quite likely other civilizations. And it's quite likely those civilizations have visited us and will continue to visit us. There's a number of theories how we came to be here. One is, of course, that in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, and most religious people believe in that kind of a concept. Part of that, the Bible says that let us make man in our image. That's Genesis 1:26. It's kind of interesting that he says, let us make man in our image. That would indicate to me, at least, that there's other people involved, perhaps other civilizations. The Smithsonian Institute and most of science today says that humans are not only related to apes, but we are apes. I don't know if that's true or not. They feel that way because we share some 98% of our DNA with chimpanzees, which is our closest relative. So this may be your great-great-grandfather. The scientists say that we were designed or came to be in the primordial soup, that one little cell was formed, that life started in this primordial soup, possibly because of a lightning strike into the chemicals that started life. This is, of course, people's best ideas. And we have evolution that the scientists came up with. We started out with this one cell and gradually grew up, so to speak, to multiple cells and to tadpoles. Some people look like tadpoles. And any case, gradually grew into ape-like beings and then into humans. However, people are not real aware of the fact that we are very complicated, more complicated than almost anybody realizes. There's 22, just in our one chromosome, there's 220 million base pairs long. Essentially, we are billions of cells and very complicated, and that it doesn't seem like that could have happened by accident through evolution. The human genome contains some 3 billion base pairs. And it's interesting that the DNA in chimpanzees and apes is different from our own. and that Dr. Gibbons states that we have 18 pairs of chromosomes that are identical, but 4, 9, and 12 show evidence of being remodeled, that someone or some group or God or somebody changed us and made us different. One area that we're different than chimpanzees and apes is that our brain is much bigger, 3 times bigger, and the chimpanzees have stayed small for millions of years. People don't realize how complex we are. We have billions of cells, and I'm going to show you a little bit about one cell. And if you think of New York City as combining one cell, you can see that we have the outer layer around New York City, and as we go deeper into it, we find that there's all kinds of rooms, there's buildings, there's all kinds of pipes and lighting, and all of this is how complex our single cell is. Not only is a single cell so complex, this is like the electrical system within the cell, which is equivalent to New York City. We are so complex that we can reproduce that cell within a matter of minutes. Francis Crick, the founder of DNA, who actually sent me an email, said life did not evolve first on Earth. A highly advanced civilization became threatened, so they devised a way to pass on their existence. They genetically modified their DNA and sent it out to our planet. Now, one of the best ways to send out DNA is to come here yourselves. And I feel that the aliens have come to our planet and changed our DNA. If we look back about 10,000 years ago, we have cavemen who were gatherers and hunters, and very bluntly, they weren't very sophisticated. But I think they saw UFOs overhead, something like this, and they painted them on their walls in their various cave art, particularly in France and Spain, but in other countries as well. Here's another one from Altamira, Spain. One that's a little lower. You can see that. And one from the Cahokia Cave in France, the Hall of Bulls, way up here. I don't know if you can see it in the upper left-hand corner there. There's a small disc above the bulls. Now the caveman looked kind of like this. It was rather dark, had primitive tools. Some 10,000 years ago, here were the tools of the cavemen. They had spears and arrows, basically made out of stone implements, and scrapers, that kind of thing. Now, Lee Berger is a director of paleoanthropology in South Africa, and he has some interesting ideas. He says that most of the Homo sapiens, or humans, the first humans, their bones are found in gold mines in South Africa. That the early humans may in fact have been gold miners or been used to conduct the gold mining. They also had apparently ancient temples and mines and even astronomical observatories. He says something interesting, that the gorillas, the 2 types of chips, and orangutans lived some 5 million years ago, but evidence for humans is only about 60,000 years ago. And this table here, which is not very large, is about all the evidence that we really have that goes back before 60,000 years ago. The point is that there's not much good evidence to indicate that we're much older than that, although there is speculation that we are older. Now here's the Sumer tribe from Ethiopia, who, this picture was taken just a year or so ago, who, as you can see, is one of the oldest tribes in the world, but they are still rather primitive. And these may in fact be some of our ancestors. Their ancestors are our ancestors. Researchers say that the Human Genome Project, when they're looking at our DNA, they found that much of it seemed to be unused, and that fact may have come from extraterrestrial life forms. Now, the Air Force Academy has this textbook called Environmental Space Sciences, and Colonel Don Carpenter, a friend of mine, wrote that the famous Dropa stones also provided strong evidence of the Earth being visited by aliens. That, believe it or not, the Air Force Academy, up until recently, was taught from this book. And he discusses the Dropa stones, which are kind of like CDs that they found with hieroglyphics on them, indicating that some advanced form of life had visited Earth. Now, you may not be aware of this, but in Tibet and China, they found some 200 pyramids. And these pyramids are similar to those in Egypt. And these pyramids are some 250 feet high, and there's several hundred of them. Well, they started examining them up closely, and some of them are, 2 or 3 in a row. It's almost like a base was there, and it appears that the UFOs landed on the tops of these pyramids. Typical one, landing, if you can imagine, landing on the flat top pyramids. The question, of course, is why would they want to first build these huge structures and land on them? Well, in some areas, the pyramids have eroded, particularly those near water. And this is an area showing some of the eroded pipes that were once under the pyramid. And these pipes ran from the top of the pyramid deep into the ground. And this was part of the construction of the pyramid. And they found them leading into the nearby saltwater and lakes and underground. And this is what the alien pipes look like up close. They're made of silicon dioxide and calcium oxide and 10% metal. And they carbon dated them, and they found them to be 12,000 years old. In any case, the Chinese scientists came to the conclusion that these broken pipes and so on indicated some kind of a power station, another one of the pyramids taken in the winter, and that it's kind of obvious, but lightning often is attracted to higher structures and contacts these pyramids. Lightning is drawn to them. And we discovered that Nikola Tesla had built a similar object, 250 feet high, which is approximately the height of these pyramids, and he built shafts down into the ground, 450 feet, and these shafts collected electrical energy. And that with this tower, he could light, without wires, lights 26 miles away. So there's an indication that these pyramids have a real capability for carrying electrical and electromagnetic energy that is transferred to the UFOs. Now, you say, well, that's kind of silly. But we find something rather interesting. Here on your left is the Chinese pyramid, and the one on the right is a United States Air Force pyramid built at Area 51. And apparently they are doing some experiments with these pyramids, maybe putting some of their UFOs on there and collecting the electrical energy. Another thing is that we find these similar pyramids are on Mars and on other planets as well. So it appears that the aliens use this. Now we go back to our scripture, and it says, chapter 6 of the Genesis of the Bible, it says the aliens were on the earth in those days and also afterwards, and the children of the gods saw the daughters of Adam were fair and took them as wives, whichever they pleased. We have ancient Chinese drawings depicting flying aliens, and after some study, they determined that the aliens who visited China and built these pyramids were the blonde, blue-eyed aliens. And this shows a Google shot from the air, but there's 10 pyramids shown on this particular shot. And they're all over that part of China. Danish researchers have concluded that all blue-eyed people share a common ancestor, and that the SLC24A5 gene is associated with light skin, but that was only found to exist some 6,000 to 10,000 years ago. In other words, if you have light skin or blue eyes or blonde hair, you've only been on Earth a very short time. Now, the scientists say that skin color is correlated to where you live on the Earth. If you live in Africa, your skin is going to be dark. If you live in Sweden, your hair and skin is going to be light. But people who once lived in Africa have moved and they're still dark, and people who live in Alaska and so on are still dark. Here shows one of the areas, pretty much most of northern Europe, where blue eyes are prominent. Less so with the little darker areas. Also with the blonde hair. The blonde hair is in Norway and Sweden, Germany, Poland, Lithuania, and so on. Somewhat in England. It's interesting that the Eskimos, even though they're real far north, still have dark skin. Now, one of the things they've been digging up in China is blonde, blue-eyed mummies, so to speak. People that, I don't know if seeing a dead person bothers anybody, but they're finding these bodies of blonde hair and red-haired people that lived thousands of years ago. And many of them are quite tall, which is, of course, comparatively speaking, not what the normal Chinese looks like. Here's pretty much a group of skin colors from blondes on the left to dark on the right. The point being is there's a complete difference group. And we suggest that mating with alien blondes caused people who had dark skin to make their skin much lighter, and gradually more and more became lighter. Typical blue-eyed blonde. And the question is, are you related to this blonde, blue-eyed alien or to this chimpanzee? How many here are related to the chimpanzee? Well, I like him better, so. I think you just have to think about it as kind of what's most likely. In any case, there's the pyramids in China, but if we go south into India and Pakistan, we also find that there's something like pyramids there. Cambay is kind of interesting because it's now an underwater city. And the scriptures and ancient writings of the Indians, this is 9th not American Indians, but Indian Asia, speak and even have drawings of vimanas, which are essentially UFOs that flew and, according to their scriptures, even bombed cities like Mohenjo-daro in Pakistan, which is a 8,000-year-old city or so on. Cambay and in the Indian Ocean actually is underwater now. The ocean, as the ice melted, went much higher and buried certain cities that were along the coast. And this has happened all over the world. Here again is the pictures of the underwater city. And some of the most sacred places in India, of course, are the temples. And Khajuraho in India has an interesting place that is kind of, some people call this a mountain and some people call it a pyramid. But on top of these structures are these vehicle-like things. And I think they're called vimanas. They're meant to show that they had UFOs in the past and that they could fly. There's a whole series of them built to Lord Shiva, which is one of the Hindu gods. And you can see clearly, I think, the dish-shaped UFOs at the top. Now here is a picture of Lord Shiva. I don't know if you notice anything about him, but he's quite light-skinned and light hair and so on. And you go over to the Middle East, not far from Asia, and Zecharia Sitchin, for example, had done a lot of translations of Sumerian writing. He thought that this was probably the solar system, which is in the lower left there. And they have these thousands of years old paintings and sculptures of what appears to be UFOs. And they're Sumerian gods. A disc with some kind of being inside. Actually, they call it kind of like an angel, E.T. inside. And they show many of the Anunnaki with wings. This is all part of Sumerian, Akkadian, Assyrian, and Babylonian cultures several thousand years ago. One interesting thing is here's Anunnaki later with what appears to be a watch that he's wearing on his wrist there. And they built these ziggurats, which are kind of like a pyramid, that are much higher than this. This is essentially thousands of years old, and you're only getting the bottom half of it. But it's just similar to a pyramid in design. This is allegedly a photograph of what they've taken of a UFO. And we find that the first wheel known in the world was in Sumeria. Now, we find that the scriptures and the ancient writings from the Egyptians, the Indians, the Norwegians, the Chinese, the Tibetan, and so on, and the Americans, all say that alien visitors were here, and they had craft, and they built those craft, and they flew in those craft. And we look at a map of the Middle East and Europe, and over at Visoko, on the upper left there, in Bosnia, we find pyramids, and of course, down in Egypt as well. Here's the pyramid in Bosnia. There's thought to be 3 of them at least. And again, the stories are that aliens landed there. We even have stories in the Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament, about UFOs, Ezekiel and the wheel, and so on. And of course, in the pyramids, they're wonderful structures. I've been inside them. I doubt if we could reproduce them today. They're essentially, you have huge, strong walls, and everything fits together perfectly. And you couldn't fit your Visa card in between the pieces of the rock. Other interesting thing is that the three pyramids match up with Orion and their god Osiris. And Christopher Dunn, who's an engineer, has examined the pyramids closely, and he says that he believes that there's some kind of a power plant. And he wrote a book about it, and has very excellent evidence. That's a talk in itself, but you get the general idea. Some of the people visited Egypt and various places. There's structures and prints of objects that they've carved in the walls and the like that look something like a UFO. In Europe, there's similar things in Bosnia, and we mentioned the caves, and particularly in England and Ireland, there's various objects that can fit the scene. Now, when I was in the Air Force, I was flying tankers, and London Control picked up a UFO, and they asked us to investigate. So we were up here in the right-hand side, they're up in the North Sea, and they said the UFO was over the Stonehenge area. And we were at 30,000 feet, and we started descending, and they were clearing the traffic. All traffic was moved out of the way so that we could descend down to 1,000 feet to chase this UFO. And we turned on the aircraft radar. Well, it's actually already on. We just raised the level a little bit so we could pick up the alien UFO, and it was this huge return. And it was very similar to the Firth of Forth Bridge in Scotland, which I'm showing you here, which is about a mile long. And in other words, the radar return that we had was almost the same as this bridge, which shows that it was probably a metal structure and obviously quite large. It was at night, but this is what we think we saw at night, but it had a lot of lights on it. And when we get over the Stonehenge area, the UFO flew up into space. And we were doing about 400 miles an hour, and it was doing about 50 times that fast. And it's this huge object going into space. Now, shortly after that, we were invited to a dining in, and Prince Phillip asked if he could essentially eat with us and talk with us. And we sat around having cigars and some kind of dessert. And we told our stories about seeing UFOs. There were several other crews besides ours. There's about 11 people there. And he was very friendly and so on, and was very interested. And he indicated that he tried to keep up with the UFO field as much as possible, and whenever Cruz has seen anything, he tried to meet with him, or his aide would. And I asked him why he believed in UFOs, and he said that his uncle, Earl Mountbatten, had seen them up close, and that basically he believed his uncle who raised him. He didn't admit to have seen any. This is Stonehenge, but if you look at it, it also looks like a disc. And at one time, these had wooden planks and so on around them, and they were very much in a disc shape. Again, near Stonehenge in this area, there's often UFOs seen, and of course, the whole system about crop circles. And many crop circles are formed just in a very short time we think they have something to do with the aliens. One of the typical craft, actually this picture was given to me by a naval officer. But here's Silbury Hill, which is very close to Stonehenge, where you could land a UFO on. And something not generally known is that when we chased this UFO, it was probably a mothership. And the discs come out of the mothership, usually about 20 or so, and they go out throughout the countryside. And in England, there's evidence that they, I don't know if the right word is worshipped, but at least were aware of motherships. For example, this is this huge monolith that was put up in Redstone that the archaeologists don't know what it means, but I feel it has to do with being a mothership. Now, it's interesting that these motherships may have come to England thousands of years ago, bringing gifts and so on and landing. And I don't know if you can see this very well, but there's going from the bottom left to the top right, there's what's called a cursus. Again, the archaeologists don't know what they are, but to me it looks like where a mothership landed and they chose to dig up the ground, and there's like a 3-foot, well, like little hole, so to speak, and there's a mound built, and it's about a mile long, and the shape is pretty much like a mothership. In any case, that's my thought. And it kind of reminds me of the cargo cult back during the World War II. The Allies would bring the Pacific Islanders gifts and drop them from the air, you know, parachutes and so on. And after the Allies left, the villagers built replica planes and airports, hoping that the gods would come back. And I feel that our ancient brothers may have come up with the same idea, hoping that the aliens would come back. Now, when you go over to Ireland, I don't know how many happen to be Irish, but Tuatha De Danann are the, you might say, the ancient Irish, and they are alleged to have come to Ireland in flying ships. And there's also the pyramid-like structures there, and the disc-shaped structures, which are quite old. As a matter of fact, one of the oldest structures in the world is in Ireland. Now, if you go all the way over to the Americas, we find similar things in South America, particularly. One of the ancient cities there is Carroll. And if you go over Peru with a satellite, you look down, you can see these Nazca lines. I don't know if you've heard of those, but there's lines in the ground made in ancient times. And these lines point, this main line here points to Carroll. And this gives you an idea what it looks like today. It has a interesting disc-shaped structure, a couple pyramids, another disc-shaped structure. And here's Nazca with some of the designs that they have, like monkeys and so on. The second tail points down towards an ancient city in Peru. Another one is a Hummingbird Pointer. And if you look at a map of the area, each one of these type animals, lizards and monkeys and whales and astronauts and so on, point to the various ancient cities. I got on Google Network and just followed them. Here's the hummingbird. Now, another thing that's interesting, some of the tops of the mountains are actually shaved off, and it looks like they may have been some kind of runway or a landing point. And in the Bolivian museums are these what look kind of like airplanes, actually. And they've taken these and made them out of like wood and so on, and they allegedly actually fly. In El Fuerte, Bolivia, there's a disc-shaped craft carved in the side of the mountain. And one of the oldest cities in the world has what could be an alien up there on the very top, or some kind of god from the past, in the ancient gate. And here's one of the ancient ruins at Tiwanaku. And these structures are tremendously big, thousands of tons and so on. And they've actually fallen into disrepair, obviously. And here's other structures in Peru. The point is that these structures are, 5,000, 10,000 years old, and it's doubtful that humans without help could have built them. Now in Mexico, some of the pyramids are younger, so to speak, and were built, well, since the birth of Christ, 2 AD, about, thought to have been built, but are some of the largest pyramids in the world, and again, they're flat, and there are stories from the historians of these various nations that the gods came and visited them. Here's a 7,000-year-old disc that's on a petroglyph. And I don't know if you're aware of it, but all over the world and not far from here, there's burial mounds, and they're almost always in the shape of a disc. And within the discs, not far from here in Ross County, Ohio, for example, the Indians took pieces of stone flint and they made it into the shape of a disc. And each Indian person buried would be given a disc to hold, so to speak, which would indicate even American Indians had belief in kind of a UFO, at least a disc-shaped UFO. In Cahokia, Illinois, I've been up there and stood at the top, and several hundred feet tall, and the Indians, about 500, built that, again, UFO could land there, maybe not, but people, for some reason, decided that that's where the gods came, on something high. The Indian petroglyphs show crash discs, and I don't know if you've heard about this, but off the coast of Florida, they just found 3 pyramids underwater. And they feel that this is a tremendous discovery because the pyramids they feel are older than those in Egypt and Mexico. That there may have been a society, a civilization in Florida thousands of years ago. Now, I've talked to a number of astronauts. They've seen the UFOs in space. Some of the cosmonauts, the Soviet astronauts, have said that they've seen UFOs flying next to them, and this was one of the pictures made of what they claim to have seen. A rather interesting UFO. There's another part of this. We're being upgraded. The human brain has increased in size, about the size of a tennis ball, in the last 100 years. In other words, each year our brain, or our offspring are getting smarter. My daughter is a chiropractor and was smarter than I am, and I think there's a lot of people who will attest to the fact that a lot of the children are growing in intelligence. And they're certainly much better on computers than I am. Another thing that, well, how is this done? It could be done through abductions. It could be done by the fact that many people report tiny UFOs, only 18 inches or so in size, that come into their rooms at night and seem to be affecting them. We have what might call a new race of super Earthlings that are taller and bigger. A lot of the Olympic capabilities have been broken recently. In other words, we're getting better in a way. Now, something is going on, and I suggest that it may be the result of aliens with us. So, in a sense, there's good aliens or benevolent aliens that seem to be helping us. And there's people like Ben Rich who says that there's some out there that are a threat more than a blessing. Okay. We are, the Bible says we're fighting against people made of flesh and blood, or not made of flesh and blood, but against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in the high places. Well, it's certainly a warning, and some people have decided, well, are they really friend or foe? I'd like to think that they're probably both. Some are our friends or some are our foes. Some of the abductions and cattle mutilations and so on did not seem to have a good purpose. Now, does our government know anything about this? Well, there's some indication that they do. In 1983, President Reagan decided to build the Star Wars program essentially to destroy any Soviet missiles coming in to hit the United States, but it was also very effective against any aliens. And in a UN speech in September of '87, he said, is not an alien threat already among us? He gave a number of hints along that line. And the most expensive missile system or anti-missile system and most expensive war material program ever designed was the anti-missile defense system, the Star Wars system. And there's thought that some $50 billion a year has gone into that program year after year. And there's some indication that it is rather effective. Back in 1991, the STS-48 shuttle mission, which many of you know about, caught a video of an apparent attempt to destroy some kind of an alien spacecraft. And coming up from the bottom is a straight shot, possibly some kind of a laser, and the UFO is going towards the spot where it would be hit, but it made a sudden turn and went off into space. Gary McKinnon, a UK hacker, claims the US has a task force in space that he found going into our secret computer files. And he found the names of ships and personnel that were in a task force in space, that we have a military shuttle program, according to him. And this is kind of an interesting photo from the Naval Space Command, implying that this is some craft or something that we have, or maybe it's just a figment of imagination, but in any case, the Naval Space Command manages naval space systems while focusing on war fighter support using space-based interceptors. This is off their mission statement. This mission statement implies that something's going on in space. In Aviation Week, which is one of the, best organizations picking up what we have, so to speak, published this picture of the Blackstar craft, claiming that this craft is in space. Some of you will be going to Wright-Patterson tomorrow. As a matter of fact, we have some people that live there right here. You'll see the Air Museum. the Air Force Museum with all kinds of craft and missiles. You can see the Wright Brothers Monument. And if you go past the Wright Brothers hangar up the hill to behind the structure that tests UFOs and helicopter blades, you'll find this building. And inside this building is where I've been told by 3 different people that we had a captured UFO, and it was inside. Interesting, the building is 18F, and when you check into the building, you find that this building was built in a month. Normally it takes 2 years. A friend claimed that he was invited to go in the building in the middle of the night, and I went in there during the day and there's nothing there, but he claims this is what he saw. This picture is out of the movie Hangar 18. If you have an opportunity, try to get that movie, because apparently it was made with Air Force help, and some people, at least in the Air Force, wanted to get the information out about UFOs. And also there were aliens. Any case, apparently they were moved from that building and put into this area behind this laser-guided craft. This actually has lasers on it, and up on the runway there that goes up the hill. Tell you a little bit about my personal experiences as a boy. I lived in Marywood, Illinois, and lived on this apartment building in the top floor, and I spent most of my time looking out that big window in the center there. And there I am, a little bit younger. And I would see what looked like birds or molecules or insects or something forming in these huge areas like this. And I would know that that means that a UFO is going to land in the park there. The park was in the upper portion there, and those houses weren't there at the time. The houses have been built there since. But in any case, some of the park is still there. And I would see these UFOs, disc-shaped craft, land. They're about 25 feet in diameter, and I would get permission from my mother to go over and see the UFOs. I just thought it was a normal type thing. The pilot, so to speak, was all dressed in black, kind of like a leather, and wore a hat. And the first time when John Fitzgerald and I went over there, he invited us in, and we looked in the inside of the UFO. And it was all like a stainless steel kitchen that you see today. Didn't look like much, actually. And it wasn't a very large area to look at. The second time I went there, there was this beautiful blonde who was there. And she was kind of like my instructor. And she would instruct me on various things about the Earth, and she was very concerned about the Earth and the environment and so on. Now, that's not actually the alien. That's my wife. What happened is, like 12 years later, I saw my wife, and I thought she looked like the alien, and immediately became attracted to her, because to me, that's what the most beautiful ladies look like. Any case, she would take me on trips, and we would go to almost always high areas and look down, and she'd say, "See how beautiful the Earth is? This is the best planet within millions of miles of here." And she'd say, "They have this wonderful animals." Show me, bears and things. And we'd sit up on the top of the mountain, and she would give me instruction. And this is pretty much what she told me. Humans are destroying Earth. You're really messing it up. That each species, whether it's a bear or a dog or a human, is equal. And that we're killing many other species. And that basically that isn't fair. Now, their problem is that their alien sun is dying. And they have to leave their planet and come here. And this is part of a reconnaissance team to find out what Earth is all about and see what they have to do to basically fix it. And they said that in the future, when they come here in strength, the world will be a wonderful place. They will have a clean environment, they'll heal us, and they'll take care of us, and we'll have a wonderful world. Now, I believed them, but I guess we have to find out if that's really going to take place. And I feel that there's many aliens that are already here on Earth. There's one in the back there. They said that the aliens will build beautiful cities and everything will be great. And one thing that she told me, which I thought was interesting, was that they come here in a little ball about the size of a basketball, and that it's a huge spaceship, but they're miniaturized. And when they get near the Earth's atmosphere, they open up into a full-size, enlarged craft, and then land. Although sometimes they choose to remain small. She told me that we're all coming soon. So be prepared, folks. The aliens are coming. And that's the end of the talk. This, by the way, is a lady who claims to be an alien. She lives in Sweden, speaks 6 languages, and she sent me this picture. And it says she wants to come to the United States and become a doctor. But that she had lived on another planet before she came here. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what she claims. I don't know if you have any questions. I'm happy to take questions. Okay.
George, thank you for this presentation. How often did you meet with this woman when you were growing up? And again, what were your ages during this period of time?
I was about 5 years old.
Did it happen more than once?
About 6 times.
It happened about 6 times. Have you had any contact as an adult?
Not that kind of contact. I've only had, I've seen them more times than I'd like to admit. And we chased them in the Air Force and so on. And I always kept up with the program, and I was in intelligence, and I used to brief generals about them. But I don't know the deep secrets, so to speak. Yeah.
And did your father work in the military? Were you living on a military base?
No.
No.
This was just in a regular time.
Were the crafts?
I found about 5 other people who had similar experiences and had almost the same message given to them, that we're messing up the Earth. And a lot of abductees have a similar message.
One more just question. Were the crafts that you saw or actually went in when you were a child similar to anything you saw as an adult in the military?
Well, I saw what, I thought was a beautiful lady and a nice man to me. Now they're trying to convince, they did tell me that I had a mission, and the mission was to tell others that they're here and coming here, which I just did. Okay, just say thank you.